It's the most natural thing in the world, breastfeeding your baby.
Why am I round?
That may be true, but for me, it did not feel natural at all. So I had this expectation that it would be really normal, and it was not. From the moment they put that slimy little gray mass on me, my feeling was just, get it off. And it's embarrassing and kind of like I'm a little ashamed to even say that was my reaction, was get it off. But I had a really hard time connecting with the bump, like they say, singing songs and all of that to your bump or your baby. And I really struggled with bonding early on. So breastfeeding was no different for me. It was tough to connect in that way. I had some postpartum depression, and with that, I also really struggled with breastfeeding specifically, where there would be just a short period of time where I would just feel basically suicidal. And it passed a little bit, and I didn't understand what was going on until my second child, and the doctor said it was some kind of, I believe, dysphoric milk ejection, where it's something to do with the hormones. That made it really unpleasant, breastfeeding, especially right at the beginning. So with my second and third, I was able to get on medication, and that helped a lot. But with my first, it was a real struggle to bond with the baby. And the expectation is you'll have all these happy, feel-good hormones. And for me, it was kind of miserable. It was kind of a miserable experience. And I think as hormones kind of calmed down, as we started solids, that tends to get easier for me. Milk coming in, no one really warned me about that. Maybe it's because I didn't take classes. Go take classes. If you want to know what's going to happen, take classes, because I was just completely unaware. I thought I'd mostly figure it out. People figured it out for generations. I'll figure it out. And I watched a few videos or whatever, but I didn't really have a full picture of how it was going to go. So the milk coming in was a little painful. It was not fun, and it was very forceful. And I don't know if that's how everybody's is. I know with my kids, they struggled to latch a little bit, and part of it was because I had a forceful letdown, according to my doctor, because they were like choking on the milk and sputtering. And so I was trying all sorts of different techniques and things suggested by the nurses to help with that forceful milk letdown. But it didn't really help. It just took them a little while to get used to breastfeeding, and as they got bigger, it became less of a problem. Part of the weird part about breastfeeding is the more you breastfeed, the more you have to breastfeed. And it's kind of this cycle of where you produce more, and it makes it even more of a problem with the forceful letdown. While I was aware that there are people that can't breastfeed, I think I had this picture in my mind that it's something that is very rare for people to not be able to breastfeed. And so I had this kind of superior idea of breastfeeding. So breast is best, and nothing else will do. And so there's a lot of pressure I put on myself to be able to breastfeed. I have a relative who tried really, really hard, and they stopped. They stopped because their child was really struggling to get the hang of it. And so they were supplementing with formula, and then they had to go to formula because it wasn't working for their child. And every child is different, and every woman is different. And some people aren't capable of producing enough milk for their child, like their body is not physically able to. And that doesn't make them any less for using formula. It's a wonderful development that we have, that we're able to use formula. I kind of didn't realize just how common it was for whatever reason to not be able to breastfeed. And for some people, it's a work situation where, in the US, you have to go back to work right away pretty much. Not everybody can pump while they're at work. Even those that can, it can be really hard to sustain your milk supply when you're going to work all the time. And so for those people, it's okay. And even like for me, you don't even have to have a reason. You could just not want to. Like for me, it was really depressing to breastfeed, especially at first. And it was really hard. And I think it's valid to use formula for pretty much any reason. Something else that I didn't really realize was how much I would fluctuate in size. Bras could be a bit of a problem. from day to day, hour to hour, if you're not on top of things or if the baby sleeps for too long or something. It's not fun. When I started breastfeeding, it was really painful. So not just the pain of the milk coming in, but also having somebody sucking on your nipples is really painful, and to get started on that. So the bloody nipples, it's rough when you get started. And I particularly hated pumping. I tried pumping a little bit with the first one because I was told you need to pump in order to help your milk come in, because my first and my third were both NICU babies. That was really rough, and I hated pumping even more than I hate breastfeeding. In the one NICU, they had a room that you could go to pump in. All over the walls, they were like, I can produce milk, I'm a superhero kind of propaganda. And I think the intention is to help you not to feel like a cow. It doesn't work. It did not work. I don't know how anybody could hook themselves up to a machine like that and not feel like a cow. Tell me I'm wrong. Maybe there's those of you out there. You do what you have to do. And, when your child is going through something like that and there's nothing else you can do to help, that's what you have to do. And you do it. And you do the best that you can. And every little drop is a celebration at first. And it's very challenging. And I had short NICU stays for my babies. There were women there that had been there for months and months, still trying to pump and just help their babies heal and be able to come home. And so we were very fortunate that our kids had short stays and were not in dire situations. Obviously, breastfeeding can be messy, but I didn't really connect that. I didn't really think about that beforehand. So yeah, you have burp cloths or whatever, and a lot of times they're like, that's not big enough to catch anything. I'm like, with the first, at a point, with all of them, at a point, you get to where you're just used to spit up being on your shirt. And it's funny going to relatives' house and they get that tiny little bit of spit up on their shirt and they're like, oh, gotta go change. Oh, this baby spit up on themselves, gotta go change them. And I'm just like, it's not enough to warrant a change for me. Maybe that's disgusting. But at a certain point, you're like, I would just be changing all day. I would just be doing laundry all day if I changed for every tiny little spit up incident when I'm just going to be home or whatever. By the third one, I was just using full towels. Like, enough with the burp cloth. We didn't really use them for the first. We had like just pre-folds that we didn't end up using with the cloth diapering. We liked the flats better, so we used the pre-folds, and they're just too small. Just like most burp cloths, they're just way too small. So with this third one, we have towels, and that was better because you could cover more of yourself with it. Okay, so some of the positives though, breastfeeding was surprisingly hilarious. So when I wasn't super depressed, or once I kind of got used to it or was on medication for the depression, it was fun to kind of see, like, you don't see that part of breastfeeding because nobody really wants to record themselves breastfeeding, at least nobody I know. I know there are some people that are very positive about it and are comfortable with that, but for me, it's not something I feel comfortable recording. So it's not something you really find a lot of videos on or you hear a lot about, but breastfeeding is hilarious. So when they start, so they do their little rooting, and it's just looking for the food, and then they take their fists and wipe their mouth like with the fist, trying to communicate that they're hungry. And then of course they inevitably latch onto the wrong thing, like my arm, all the time, and you get hickeys from them constantly trying to suck on your arm. And so that's hilarious. And all of my kids did like a clicking too when they were getting hungry, where they'd like hungry in addition to the rooting. So it was super funny. And now that the baby's a little older, from the time they're like 6 months, they start trying to help with my shirt. And I'm like, no, you're making it worse. Move your hands out of the way. Get out of here. So that's always really funny. There are some smells and associations to those smells that, like, when I'm breastfeeding, cottage cheese is not great. And it's with baby poop too. Like cottage cheese in general are not smells I can handle. Mac and cheese is one of the worst that I'm like, smells too much like baby poop. So that's always fun. Another interesting thing I didn't know was that baby cannot eat if must poop. So he acts like I'm attacking him. He wants to eat, but he cannot eat. So that's fun. We actually have a little baby potty. We go and hold him over the baby potty when that happens. And that helps to get everything out so he can eat again. This is an interesting tidbit that I don't know if you've noticed. It's not a problem, but it is weird to me that, like, older generations, specifically church ladies, I've noticed, will not call it breastfeeding. And maybe that's just a time thing. It's just more common. But knowing the church ladies that I know, I think it's actually more that they're worried about saying the word breast, and not just because they grew up with the word nursing. Like my mom. I actually think it's that they're afraid to say breast in breastfeeding, which is a really weird, because then you have to like code switch with that. It's not a big deal, but it's funny.